As a keen follower of the channel over the past couple of years, you've probably picked up on some of my many psychological disorders like OCD, depression, dementia, schizophrenia, chlamydia, and most importantly, a withering sense of self-doubt. So I'm trailering the car to the track on my car hauler as a bit of insurance to make sure it and me get home at the end of the day. But I've had some time to think about those less than stellar dyno results the other day and to consider some of the comments I received. Firstly, reports from the Ecotec Miata Club Facebook group, which incidentally is the best Ecotec Miata internet community on the internet, say that a car of my configuration should make about 160 to 170 wheel horsepower. That is with a stock 2.4 liter LE5 Ecotec motor with stock cams, springs, pistons, all that internal stuff, essentially pulled directly from the donor car. And I'm also running that restrictive catalytic converter in my exhaust and running pump gas. Of course, adding engine upgrades and or running E85 would produce more power. I haven't done any of those things. Secondly, it goes without saying that wheel horsepower and crank horsepower are different things. Engineering Explained has a rather old but good video that explains this much better than I ever could, but the net of it is that 150 wheel horsepower, assuming an estimated 15% drivetrain loss, is approximately 173 crank horsepower. While that still isn't much, when new, this motor produced 169 horsepower as reported by GM at the crank. And that's assuming a factory fresh, brand new motor, which this one clearly isn't. And lastly, it's common car enthusiast wisdom that dyno results should always be taken with a grain of salt. The same car on the same dynamometer on different days may make different numbers based on changing conditions like air temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, whether I made good numbers the last time or not. And furthermore, different types of dynamometers might make different numbers for the same car, even on the same day. So comparing that with someone else who has an Ecotec Miata's results from somewhere across the country isn't an exact or precise data point. So in the end, aren't dyno results just numbers? I mean, my personal opinion is that power is simply a way to make good lap times. And speaking of which, we're almost there. Here we are back at Toronto Motorsports Park. The last time I was here in the fall of 2022 with the old stock 1.6 motor, I did a personal best lap time of 1 minute 26.8 seconds. Now, unless you've driven here before, that probably doesn't mean much without a bit of comparative data. Thankfully, the guys over at Speed Academy use TMP as their Top Gear style test track, and their resident racing driver Dave has set baseline lap times here in many of their awesome car builds. Recently, he put down a 121.0 with their GR Corolla Morizo Edition build, as well as a 122.1 and 121.5 in their DC2 Integra Type R and supercharged FA5 Civic respectively. And as I like to mention, their YouTube Track Challenge NB Miata build posted a 127.2 in the hands of a grid life touring car racing driver, which I beat by 0.4 of a second with my 1.6 motor.
Wow.
The Speed Academy guys do such amazing builds and are a huge inspiration to this pokey little car channel. Definitely go check them out. But anyway, let's be real here. My humble Ecotec Miata is much slower and built to a much jankier standard than their builds, so we're not expecting too much. I gingerly stepped back onto the track for the first time in a year and a half on the maiden voyage of my recently engine-swapped Miata. The plan is to simply do a few laps at a moderate pace, see how the car feels, and get reacquainted to it with its new power plant. As we build a bit of pace, you might be wondering about my busy hands, and although TMP is a relatively tight 3 kilometer, 14 turn track, this is my less than elegant way of feeling out grip. Aggressive steering input on turn-in to see how the car feels, or in a turn, small pulses of increased steering angle to get the tires to slip. That, paired with some proactive dabs of countersteer, make it all look a bit fussy, but I find it helps me recalibrate my rusty brain. For you veteran track drivers, how do you go about getting the car and yourself warmed up? Please leave a comment. So after turning a few, even at about 70% pace, the results are still good for a 125.7, besting my previous PB by over 1 second. Not a bad start. In terms of performance, the 2.4-liter Ecotec in this chassis feels so much faster than the 1.6 motor. Coming into the braking zones, it's carrying noticeably more speed, and on corner exit, that extra torque digs its way out with more flair and gusto. There's not a lot of top end with these motors, but the mid-range is its wheelhouse. Like diving into turn 2 and scrambling through the S's, it feels quite responsive, lively, and willing to accelerate. Of course, there's a lot more track time where that came from, so I bring it in and give the car a quick once over to ensure that all the things are still where they're supposed to be.
All right, I got my buddy Vince here with me in the car for his first time out on track riding passenger. Why don't we scare him? Your safety is my utmost importance somewhat.
We'll see.
If you feel like you want to throw up, go like this.
I'll close the helmet. If anything, it's just entangled in here.
Okay, all right, good plan. I like it.
So to entertain him on his first ride-along laps of TMP, I try to get up to pace quickly and showcase the Ecotec Miata's astonishing power and handling. Unfortunately, the camera placement when carrying a passenger isn't ideal, especially when it's right in line with getting hit by his helmet in right-hand turns. And even with the extra weight in the car, I still clocked a 125.4, 0.3 seconds faster than the previous session, probably due to adjusting the tire pressures and cleaning up my driving a bit. Big thanks to Vince for the awesome photos and videos he took to spice up this relatively boring in-car track driving video. For the next session, I was back to flying solo, and I hadn't noticed the camera mount had gotten all floppy, so I got a lot of these kinds of shots. And I didn't set up the GoPro correctly, so we got a lot of this overexposed, blown out footage. Oh well. And with a bit of hustling the car, I managed to click off a 124.2. For the last session of the evening, and with the sun getting lower, I figured this is going to be my last set of laps for the day, so I set out again to see if I could tidy up a few spots and lay down a time representative of the Ecotec Miata's capability. we have it, a pretty scruffy lap, but a new personal best nonetheless at a 123.8, which is a full 3 seconds faster than the 1.6 motor with no other changes except for the Ecotec. It's still running the same hand-cooked tires, same brakes, pads, rotors, literally the same brake fluid from 2022, and despite only making 150 wheel horsepower, it absolutely rips. Sure, it wasn't anywhere as fast as that GR Corolla, but in terms of retaining the classic Miata formula of an approachable, light, playful track-hooning machine, adding a bit more grunt has made this thing even more of a riot. And if you were paying attention to the deltas on the lap timer, it showed that besides the first and last turns, I was actually off by a few tenths in almost every other turn. Meaning with a little bit more time to piece together a clean lap, this car would have been good for a low 23, or maybe touch into the 22s if it was feeling particularly mighty. Overall, the day's been a smashing success, and I'm super happy with the scrappy performance of my DIY Ecotec swapped Miata. I feel like I'm riding a high right now on top of the world, and nothing's gonna bring me down.
Whoa, 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 what the f is this? What the actual happened here?